first by winning the war of expectations from my Dominican immigrant parents. My mother did not want her smart kid to be an artist. She wanted me to be something practical. You can't imagine just the amount of pressure being directed at 18-year-old me when my mom is like, we're broke, we have nothing. You're like the smartest thing we've seen in this family. You could do something that can tear us completely out of poverty, or you could do something utterly absurd, like be an artist. You know? And for me, the idea of finding your writing voice, there's of course, you learn your craft, you take a lot of classes, you do a lot of reading, you interact with other artists. But for me, the first, probably the biggest victory of this was realizing that you can't live your parents' dreams, you have to live your own. And in immigrant communities, it's often expected that your parents give up their entire lives so that you can do something for them in a way. You can live partially their dream. And for me, for a very long time, I was living my mother's dream. And it wasn't until I shook it off that I began to really begin the journey of becoming an artist, becoming a writer. And that would be a longer story that involves reading tens of thousands of books, writing nonstop, and believing that art is more important than being a doctor, more important than being, a lawyer. That core belief that there's something incredibly valuable about creating a piece of art that someone that you'll never meet, never know, and never see will somehow be strengthened and given hope by it somewhere down the line. That core belief is what I needed to be able to win that war. Thank you. Five left, let's do it.
In your book, you talked about not only just the Dominican culture, but also like the hip-hop culture, the nerd culture, even the gothic culture. Did these have like a huge, influence on like your childhood? Why did you decide to include like, references to like Ill Bill and the Marvel world and all that stuff? And it wasn't only just in Oscar Wao, but also like in Junior and in our alma in this new excerpt that you just read for us. So why did you decide to include all of this?
Because I feel like most like mainstream representation of Latino communities are fucking terrifying. They're just terrifying. I grew up, not only did I grow up with crazy amounts of hip hop, I grew up with new wave. Like my sister was like an insane New Order fan. She loved X, the music. And my first girlfriend was a gothic girl. What for me, being Dominican was being part of the larger American fabric. And I feel like I include that because this idea that like Latinos are this monolithic ridiculousness is never fucking true. I'll never forget, I interviewed with a Finnish reporter who was like, well, what do you know about Susie and the Banshees? I'm like, motherfucker, you're from Finland. What do you know? It's a really good question because we're in a country that has got a serious problem with Spanish. Part of the risk, I wasn't just mixing any language. If I mixed French, people would have been like, ta-ta! That reminds me. But I mixed the language that when Americans dream, they dream. When Americans have nightmares, they dream in Spanish. It's like, So it wasn't the idea of striking a balance. It was, again, this stupid notion of having faith that a small portion of readers will put up with unintelligibility, not knowing what a word means, and not knowing who the hell the Silver Surfer is, or what the Bene Gesserit is, or what's, the dim mak. if they really come in contact with a vision of the world. And that was the gamble. I was like, I knew I was going to lose everybody who's like 5 words of Spanish and make them run for their like, call immigration, you know? They weren't going to hang. And I knew I was going to lose people who did not want to hear long conversations about orcs and elves. But I had this really weird belief that I could throw a party, and there would be enough people from all the camps willing to hang out with each other that it would create a new kind of audience. But there would be Dominicans who were hardcore, who don't know shit about any of the genre stuff. There would be genre nerds who don't know shit about Dominican-ness. There would be like MFA lit heads who just want to be like, I want to be a famous writer, so I got to learn how to do this shit. You know, it would be a party like no other, and I felt like it was worth losing people to have all those people together. Thank you.
So I hate to ruin the book for anyone who hasn't read it yet, but sorry. So I was wondering if you feel that your character Oscar's persistence at the end of the book and ultimately leads to his death and going for a taken woman. Is that something you feel that it was commendable in your character and something that really is a trait that humans should be striving more for, or is it more of a social commentary on how people can be overly persistent and really try too hard for things that aren't good?
No, I hear you, but like anything in a book, bro, in a novel, in a movie, it's a point of contention. Some people are like, yes, that's admirable. Other people are like, you're fucking crazy, you know? I mean, I wasn't trying to take sides, I was just showing that some people are like this.
I mean, I'm really curious as to like what your opinion on the way that he approaches it.
You like the way I do it?
Possibly, but as well as is it a commendable action by your character's part, or if it's foolish?
I know what you're saying. The thing is, when you get to be guys, look, I'm double the freshman's age. When you get to be my age, I'm not kidding around, guys. When you get to be my age, judgment becomes less important than compassion. And I know that sounds like me and Oprah have been smoking too much shit, but it's really true. And I'm less worried about that Oscar, that a part of me thinks Oscar's a serious fucking dumbass. I'm less worried about that, or that I'm arguing that people should be like this, and more worried about, have I depicted this action as humanly as possible? But you know, if you're asking me, if that was like my godson, I would slap the shit out of him. That doesn't mean I don't have compassion. You know? Thank you. Two.
Hi, I'm the only Catholic. I'm a freshman here,
Sure.
and I'm also a Latin American, Hispanic, from New Jersey, as well versed in genre. So I identified most with you here. And I wanted, he was well versed in genre too, and so was Oscar. In the end, they both get a lot. So I want to know if you were advocating subtly with these references, the graphic art medium as a source of self-empowerment and cultural understanding. And the second part, if you were considering ever doing any work in the graphic medium.
Sure. I could never do a comic book because I work too slow. And serial narratives depend on you working very, very fast. So, there's all sorts of things I would do if I wasn't so slow. You know? No, for real, I'd like to write a movie, but no studio is going to hire someone that takes 12 years to write a script. It's not happening. You know? The other thing is, look, I went to college at a time where books by people of African descent, books by Latinos, books by immigrants were considered a little cute, quaint subset of literature. Very much the way people think of comic books as a cute, quaint subset of literature. Sure, there's some books that are good, but overall it's all crap.